Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. We want you to keep up on Twitter. I've been sending out a lot of strategic bulletins on Twitter, and I can point to the fact that today in the London Guardian, one of their blogs has an attempted slander that puts me and Alex Jones in very strange company. They allege that we're the friends of Glenn Beck. Well, I'm not a friend of Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck is a proto-fascist who works for Rupert Murdoch. He's like Oswald Spengler in the Weimar Republic, who worked for Hugenberg, the big press baron of those days. I have nothing to do with Glenn Beck. I have nothing to do with other stooges of Rupert Murdoch and that extreme right-wing reactionary group of the U.S. ruling class, people like O'Reilly and so forth. We're obviously not neocons here. We're not like Gaffney or some other neocon. But this is, as you know, pretty much the New Deal on the air, the good neighbor policy, very traditional Franklin D. Roosevelt policies, brought up to date, to be sure, and improved on as much as we can improve them, but nothing to do with Glenn Beck. Anyway, it does at least show that they're very sensitive to the question of Al Jazeera being essentially a speaking tube for British intelligence. Turn on Al Jazeera, and you'll find all those professors from Exeter, from Oxford, from Cambridge, from all the British academic community, and you'll see there that this is, of course, British intelligence on the air. And that's the interesting thing about them is that as the Egyptian government turned off the Internet in the night between the 27th last week and the 28th of January, that essentially shut down Twitter and Facebook. But that left Al Jazeera, and it took them a whole 4 or 5 or 6 days to begin essentially proceeding against Al Jazeera, which is, again, not acting as a news agency at all, but as a conscious vehicle of destabilization against this government. But let's just look at the outcomes of these demonstrations. The big thing to notice about this is billed as a CIA people power coup, but the people power that we've seen has been pretty feeble. It has been pretty wretched. Egypt has 80, 90 million people. Cairo has 20 million. And as far as I can see, they have never, ever, under any circumstances, gotten more than 50, 60,000 into that square and in the surrounding areas. And we'll just go through this. On the 25th of January, they had 15,000 in Tahrir or Liberation Square. On the 26th of January, it was said that they had thousands. Well, that can be pretty anemic. On the 27th of January, it was even less, and that means it was petering out. That was the time when the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwan, decided that they would join the protest, and that is also when Baradei, the darling of the globalists and the elitists, decided to come back into the country. Now, 28th of January, the Friday, was the big day. The Internet had been shut off. Twitter had been shut off. Facebook, the usual tools of the subversives, had been taken away from them. And, of course, Friday is Friday prayers, so that's a holiday, and it's easy for people to come out and demonstrate. So on this day, the media line was tens of thousands. There was this altercation on the bridge between the security police and the demonstrators. There was the occupation of the square, which at this point, I guess, became permanent. The army began to show up in the streets, but never more than 50,000. And you can always tell when you look at the BBC Arabic service, when you look at the Al Jazeera, CNN, whatever it is, look at the camera angles and look at the extent of the crowd they're trying to show you and what they're trying to suggest. And again, for a people power revolution, it has had a very, very narrow base, precisely because none of their demands has any relevance to working people in any sense. As a matter of fact, one of the TV networks showed a guy who essentially said, well, I'm an office worker, and I'm going to go demonstrate today. I don't care about these demonstrators and their demands. I don't care about Mubarak one way or the other. I just hope that if I go out and demonstrate, I might get a wage increase out of that. and therefore I go out and do it. And I think a lot of people are like that, but there's nothing in the demands of the demonstrators, right? Mubarak should leave. It's not even Mubarak should resign. It's that Mubarak should go into exile, right? It's the old Ciceronian quaecum ita sint, conferte in exilium, right? Since these things are so, Mubarak, go into exile. Never more than 50, 60,000, and we'll trace it through. On this Friday, by the way, the demonstration, supposedly so peaceful and so democratic, went very violent. How about arson? How about the burning of the party headquarters there in Cairo? How about the burning of another very large building, looked to be of reinforced concrete, something from the style of maybe 20, 25 years ago in the U.S., maybe more recent in a place like Cairo, large 10, 15-story building, burning like mad. Something looked a little bit like the White House in Moscow the last time the Democratic forces came to town, and with Yeltsin in those days. There was also then the vandalizing of the Cairo Museum, but also an armed gang of armed gunmen tried to break into the Interior Ministry. One gets the idea that they were there in order to try to steal documents, maybe for Assange or something like this. And then there was a gun battle between these armed demonstrators and the police. And, of course, the demonstrators say, oh, we didn't vandalize the Cairo Museum. Yeah, why not? Who guarantees it? So it was violent. It has been violent the whole time, very much so. And where were the great humanitarians, Ban Ki-moon and Cameron and Hillary and Obama and the rest of these hypocrites on that Friday, a week ago today, recording, when the violence then came in? On the 29th of January, the Saturday, we're told that there was they were organizing jailbreaks. The demonstrators were letting people out of jail, and that there were also the burning of many police stations. There's another dimension of violence, right? You could see all these burned-out police stations, and people who had been inside were then let out. We are then told that the crowd in Tahrir Square on the Saturday was 5,000. That's pretty anemic. But then we were told, it doesn't matter because a lot of them were judges. This was the day the Air Force buzzed the place. On January 31st, the Monday, it was very quiet overnight, we were told. As a matter of fact, by the morning of January 31st, I believe, there were about 200 people left in this square, but this was then counterbalanced by the fact that stars and celebrities and movie actors were showing up. Now, the Tuesday, February 1st, this was the big day. This was supposed to be the million-man march. All right, fine. You want to have a people power coup, you got to be able to have a million-man march, and they couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. There were no millions. Indeed, the estimates that were given were the following. The demonstrators claimed that they had 8 million people in the places across Egypt, in all, different Egyptian cities. This obviously inflated, beyond any belief. Al Jazeera, otherwise the most extreme, was going with an estimate of 2 million until it became obvious that this was absurd. And then they went back to said to be 1 million. So first guaranteed 2 million down to said to be 1 million. Then we had MSNBC said thousands. Now that's pretty anemic. U.S. wire services, for example, Yahoo said tens of thousands. That was the wire service consensus of the U.S. Reuters claimed 200,000. And my estimate, again, was that they've got about 50 to 60,000 people at most who will come out. And again, the hardcore that's willing to stay overnight are the golden youth. They have no responsibilities. What do they care? Their parents take care of them. They can go home and have a meal when they want to and then come back. And then the Muslim Brotherhood that comes in and provides the larger numbers. And you can see it, right? The people that are praying, the women who are wrapped up in a place like Egypt, that's going to be the Muslim Brotherhood. So we'll be back in just a minute here on World Crisis Radio.